Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Ius Laboris client webinar on coronavirus managing a workforce in Eurasia in challenging times. My name is Annie and I'm the Business Development Coordinator at Ius Laboris, and I will be facilitating this session for you. So our presenters today are all lawyers from the Ius Laboris firms in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine and Kazakhstan. I will now hand over to our first speaker, Irina Anyukhina from Russia. Go ahead, Irina, you can start.
Thank you, Annie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Irina Anyukhina. I am partner of labor and employment practice at Aurud law firm operating in Russia. I'm happy to introduce also to you my co-speakers who are on the panel today. Daria Zhuk, Cobalt law firm from Belarus, Valeria Savchuk from Vasilki Zilin Partners, Ukraine, and Ekaterina Hamidulina, Equitas law firm, Kazakhstan. We will cover the impact and the aspects in our jurisdictions which were produced by the spread of corona in our countries, and health and safety rules and regulations, and we will also speak a little bit about the future. Let me first start with Russia. Corona came to Russia a little bit later than to Europe, but it produced quite a dramatic impact both on businesses and from legal perspective of the country worldwide as well. So Russia did not introduce official lockdown regime. Instead, the so-called regime of non-working days was introduced on 30th of March till 11th of March. Now this regime is lifted. So what does this regime mean to Russia? It means practically shutdown of the businesses, save for the essential organizations like continuously operating organizations, pharma, medical. They still could continue operations, but the rest of the businesses were closed. The employees should nonetheless be payable in a normal way. Starting off May 12th, this regime changed to a different situation. Regions and local regional authorities may decide which restrictions will continue to apply and which businesses may start operations or not. So this is currently in each region depending on the actual epidemiological situation, and measures are very different and they vary from region to region. In fact, in most of the regions during May, the same level of restrictions and limitations continue to apply. For example, in Moscow region and in some other regions, digital passes are required for individuals to travel to offices by personal or corporate car, by public transportation. Public events are banned all over Russia. People who are 65 years plus, they should be self-isolated. External borders are closed. Internal borders are opened, but again, it's possible to travel only if there is special authorization like digital passes. So let's speak a little bit what is permitted. During the period until 11th of May, only essential organizations were able to work. Again, as mentioned, it was pharma, food, some essential goods providers, but also some additional organizations were able to do business, like those who could qualify as continuously operating organizations. Currently, some regions allowed certain businesses to reopen their activities. In Moscow, these are construction sites as well as production facilities. The other businesses are able, if there is a possibility, are able to continue work remotely. Schools and universities are all closed. Banks are still operating in a normal way. And there is some additional facilitation for the businesses on the governmental level, saying that if there are foreign nationals in the headcount of the companies and their work permits, for example, expired, it is possible still continue with their employment and even hire foreign nationals without respective immigration permits until 15th of June. Obviously, health and safety requirements were introduced, both mandatory and recommendations. Lots of recommendations were issued, including for each particular industry sector. Social distancing of not less 1 meter is mandatory. It is mandatory for employers to measure the temperature of employees if they come to the offices. Travels are limited, as well as face-to-face meetings. Digital meetings, of course, are welcomed in most of the businesses. It is also necessary to inform the state authorities about those people who have signs of being infected and how many people will be visiting the office, how many people will continue to work remotely. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Moscow region, mandatory masks and gloves regime was introduced for employees working in the offices or for all individuals visiting public places. Additionally, in some regions, mandatory testing was approved. It is necessary to test people for corona, not less than 10% of employees for corona every 2 weeks, starting from 12th of May. What is recommended for the employers, since the employers have to follow certain special requirements introduced during this pandemic situation? It is required to inform employees about health and safety measures, to introduce even coronavirus policy to be made known to all employees so that they are mandatory to follow by employees on each level. And the Russian regulator in the area of human well-being and consumer rights, the Federal Service for Supervision of Consumer Rights and Human Well-being, introduced recommendations. And those recommendations, although they are not mandatory, still will apply to most of the businesses in different sectors. Now, what happens to the businesses, and what options the companies have in Russia in terms of optimizing workforce management? Terminations is possible in Russia basically on general grounds. It is possible also to ask an employee to take paid or unpaid leave. However, it is not possible to force the employee to do that, because by law consent is required. The companies may also think about reducing work hours or working days and prorated reduction of salaries. But again, this requires employees' consent. Remote work is now widespread across different economies, across different businesses, and it is necessary to formalize this kind of change of the terms of employment in the employment agreement. So switching to remote work is again subject to employees' consent. At the same time, the employers may, at their own discretion, impose downtime regime, in which case 2/3 of the salary, of the base salary or average salary, depending on the circumstances, will be payable to the employees. Sick pay certificates for those who have corona or who contacted with people having corona, infected by corona, and remain safe, isolated, are payable. They are, by general rule, they are payable by employers currently, it is possible to receive payments directly from the Social Security Fund. Government is trying to support the businesses. The measures are very focused, and the first set of measures relate to the most affected industries in Russia. Those like tourism, airline industry, hotel business. They may rely on interest-free loans, which will be provided and which are apparently provided by state-owned banks. There is also nationwide ban on insolvency for businesses in the most affected areas. Big set of measures are introduced by the government to support small and mid-sized businesses, reduce social security contribution, extension of the deadlines for making social contributions, as well as state subsidies for payment of salaries are introduced. Employees, in terms of employees, they apparently may count on increased unemployment allowances, which was introduced for those employees who may be subject to dismissal, who were dismissed, terminated from 1st of March. This measure is introduced in some measures. There are also increased subsidies and allowances for protected categories of employees, like those who have children. Thus, payments for individuals who have children between 3 to 16 years old, they receive state-funded additional payment. Same relates to state-funded monthly payments to employees of social, educational, and health institutions. And I would love to begin here intro about Russia and pass the floor to Daria to speak about Belarus.
Thank you, Irina. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor for me joining you today. And regionally wise, I represent Belarus, being a managing partner of Cobalt in Belarus. It's a full-service pan-Baltic and Belarusian law firm. And I would like to say that Belarus is close to the Swedish model in this coronavirus war and has not announced national quarantine, emergency, or lockdown. Therefore, most of the nationwide obligatory measures taken relate to self-isolation regime since the end of the March. What does it mean? Basically, persons arriving at Belarus from the countries where cases of COVID are registered, and there is a special list that is updated and approved by Ministry of Healthcare and is publicly available, as well as infected persons and persons who have so-called first and second levels of contact with the infected ones. And basically there is also a special procedure how this level of contact shall be determined. So these persons must be self-isolated for 14 calendar days, either from the day of arrival to Belarus or from the date when the contact has been established or the effect of an infection basically was detected. Exceptions are set for diplomats, official delegations, drivers, crew members, and foreign persons in transit. In the meantime, local healthcare organizations are entitled to shorten or even extend the terms of self-isolation at the request either of the person or company or employer who invited, for instance, foreign specialists for business purposes, for instance, to fulfill some contractual obligations. Besides, each administrative region is entitled to set local soft quarantine recommendations depending on local epidemiological factors and situation. Surely the most extensive list of such recommendations is approved by Minsk as a capital city, and basically sets recommendations for publicly attended places like shops, restaurants, beauty salons. So they are not closed, but there are some soft recommendations that they should follow in terms of physical distancing, some technical breaks, and so on and so forth. So basically, as I said, Belarus is not locked, so the borders are open, the travel within the country is permitted, but employers are recommended to limit the business trips, for instance. There is one limitation in terms of logistics and road transportation services, such road transport for freight is possible only under special routes with a limited number of stops at the special places, and also the companies, transportation companies, can find these routes and stops publicly in a website of Ministry of Transportation, and just should plan their logistics in advance. If we speak about employers' obligations and workforce management, as I said, there are no additional obligations or rights that were imposed to employers, and here we are not very creative, and I believe that we are having now quite similar measures taken that you might have in your jurisdiction. We have quite general safety advice to the employers to take all necessary preventative measures to secure employees' health and safety, to conduct wet cleaning and disinfection, to limit meetings, travels, and personal contacts. But in terms of management, and there are surely some organizational changes that employers are trying to impose now, to be socially responsible and to follow these health and safety measures. Teleworking, where it's possible, is quite a widespread and developed market practice at the moment. Adapting the work to comply with social distancing, like separate work shifts, reduced working hours, and our recent legislative amendments allowed basically employers to have minimum notice period for one working day to introduce such organizational changes. Surely leaves, annual paid or unpaid social leave under employees' consent are also quite widespread measures. And if we speak about self-isolation, and if it's an obligatory measure, for instance, when the person is infected or he came back from the outside countries, so the self-isolation is considered to be a sick, which is paid and compensated by basically Social Security Fund. Frankly speaking, we don't have a lot of governmental support schemes for employers. No wage or social security contribution compensation were introduced. As I said, sick leaves are compensated by the government. However, there are some schemes for SMEs for the most affected industries, such as, for instance, retail, sports, educational services, rent, and some other small industries. Such companies may be entitled for tax and rent on holidays, where the payments are deferred until the end of the year. And I would say that the companies are using these opportunities quite good now. In terms of employees, they are compensated. The sick leave is compensated in the amount of 80% of their daily earnings for first 12 calendar days, and for 100% of the daily earnings for the rest of this period of temporary disability. And child care allowance is compensated in the amount of 100% of daily earnings. So basically, I'm done with Belarus, and I'm happy to introduce Valeria Savchuk from Ukraine. So Valeria, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Valeria Savchuk. I'm a counsel of Vasilkisil & Partners. It's a law firm, Ius Laboris law firm from Ukraine. And the first cases of coronavirus in Ukraine were detected in late February this year. However, no shutdown measures were introduced by the state until middle of March. And starting from March 12th of this year, the quarantine has been announced in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government. The first quarantine measures and limitations have been introduced on March 17th of this year. The following activities have been prohibited by the government, such as physical retail, except for food, pharmaceuticals, household essentials. Restaurants and cafes have been closed for the whole period of the quarantine, except for the home delivery. Those restaurants who have the home delivery option may still function. And also the use of public transport is limited to those who work at essential organizations, essential entities such as post, customs, telecommunications. Also, all public meetings, sport events were prohibited during the quarantine period. Theaters, movie theaters, museums were closed. Also, the cross of Ukrainian borders is limited only to diplomats and some state workers. Universities, schools, and preschools were closed and transferred to the remote learning. For some categories of employees, the 14 calendar days of self-isolation regime has been introduced, such as those people who return to Ukraine from abroad should stay at home for 14 calendar days. Also, all people older than 60 years should stay at home self-isolated. The quarantine measures may vary from region to region, as local government authorities may introduce additional limitations. For example, in Kiev, it's the capital of Ukraine, visits to public parks were prohibited. Also, all people should wear masks when they are leaving their homes. And for violation of quarantine requirements, quarantine measures, special fines have been introduced to the legislation. For example, for those stores whose activities have been prohibited during the quarantine period, the amount of fine starts from 17,000 Ukrainian hryvnias. It's approximately 600 euros. And now to the next slide. During the corona crisis, employers are faced with some new legal dilemmas. For example, how to deal with the staff of the closed businesses, the businesses which activities are prohibited during the corona crisis. And for those companies, the shutdown period has been introduced by the government for the full period of quarantine. Nevertheless, the Labor Code requires them to pay not less than 2/3 of salaries to their employees during the shutdown period. And all employees of 60 years and older, which are required to stay at home on self-isolation, may receive a payment from the state of up to half or 50% of their salaries. Other business activities, other companies which are not related to customer services are not generally prohibited. So, however, employers are encouraged by the state to introduce remote working. Where remote working is not possible, employers should introduce additional health and safety measures for their employees, such as social distancing, wearing masks and gloves when at the office, using hand sanitizers, cleaning facilities every 3 hours, etc. And because the use of public transport is limited, employers should also organize transportation of their employees to and from work, and all traffic routes for such transport should be agreed with the police. As to the remote working, there were no legislative requirements on remote working prior to the quarantine, and necessary amendments have been introduced to the Labor Code of Ukraine on March 30 of this year. An employer may require its employees to work from home by simply issuing a resolution, and no amendments to the labor agreement are needed. So the remote working is the most spread instrument for the employers to organize their work during the corona crisis, and how to deal with the business and so on. Additionally, employees may take a non-paid vacation for the whole period of quarantine, but basically not many employees were happy with this option, because the vacation during the quarantine period is not paid, and employees do not get any payments during this period. And let's talk about some support from the state, and unfortunately not many support possibilities were introduced by the state during the corona crisis. One of them is indirect support to those employees who work for small and middle-sized businesses. Why I say indirect support? Because this payment is paid to the business, and then the business should pay all the money they receive from the state to the employees. And those middle-sized and small-sized businesses whose activities have been prohibited or limited during the quarantine period may apply for the state support, and the maximum amount of the state support is 4,723 hryvnias. It's approximately 160 euros per one employee per month. And also some additional help from the state, as well as in Russia, the term for tax report filing has been extended until after the quarantine, and as well the term of payment of unified social security has been also extended until after the corona crisis. Also, for all state inspections have been postponed after the quarantine. So basically, it is all for Ukraine. So, Ekaterina, you may start.
Thank you, Valeria. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Ekaterina. I represent Equitas law firm in Kazakhstan. Our law firm has been active on the Kazakhstan legal market for more than 27 years. We provide a full range of legal services to the companies doing business in Kazakhstan, and Equitas labor and healthcare practices are among the best in Kazakhstan. On this slide, please see our contacts and the details of our partner, Yulia Chumachenko. She's one of the most experienced lawyers in Kazakhstan in the sphere of labor law. Now, I would like to briefly illustrate the Kazakhstan's response to COVID-19. The state of emergency was enforced for 2 months, and now a strict quarantine regime is enforced in the country. Kazakhstan borders with other countries and city borders are closed. Universities, colleges and schools are closed. and students and children will keep on distance learning until autumn. The major part of companies has resumed their operation, including industrial and construction enterprises, notaries, insurance companies, banks, hairdressers, dentists, and many other service organizations. And starting from May 25th, restaurants, shopping centers, non-food shops, tourist camps, hotels, excluding hostels, will also resume their operation. And a prerequisite for their functioning is a strict compliance with all sanitary requirements, as well as the social distance of employees at workplaces. And now it is forbidden to conduct sporting, family, and other public events. And many employers allow their employees to work from home, if their work can be done from home, of course. Domestic and international passenger flights are limited. Flights are carried out with lower frequency and with fewer passengers, as well as with enhanced travel safety measures and sanitary standards. What about health and safety measures? To prevent the spread of the virus, the employers must comply with the quarantine requirements, strict sanitary and disinfecting regime. In general, employers should appoint a responsible person who will monitor over the implementation of all these measures. At the same time, employer must provide all employees working at the office with disposable masks, gloves, and sanitizers. All pieces of furniture, office equipment, mobile devices, and other items must be disinfected. Today, many companies in Kazakhstan practice work from home to the extent possible. In the case of remote work, an employer must provide an employee with communication facilities and bear the cost of their installation and maintenance. Nowadays, a temporary shutdown is one of the most common anti-crisis HR measures, which allows an employer to retain its employees and reduce its related costs for the period of inability to normally operate. The employer shall issue an order declaring shutdown and pay salaries provided by an employment contract. In the case of shutdown, but not less than the minimum monthly wage, which is about $100. In order to reduce working hours or grant to an employee an unpaid leave, the employee's consent is necessary. And what about support schemes for employers? Support schemes include extended deadlines for tax reporting, zero tax rates to certain enterprises.
Ekaterina, we cannot hear you. Did you go on mute? Well, we seem to have lost Ekaterina a bit. I suggest that we move on to the what a future part, and maybe Ekaterina will come back and we'll be able to finish her slides, but you can take it from here, Irina.
Thank you, Anya. So what about the future? Let me start about a couple of words about Russia. So currently on the nationwide level, three stages gradual plan of returning to normal life was announced. This is a gradual plan, and a list of restrictions and limitations may be done by decisions of the local regional government. So first stage implies some exercise and possibility of exercising and working outside, as well as reopening of the service sector organizations of small size up to 400 square meters. At the second stage, bigger organizations may be reopened. Those who have premises of up to 800 square meters. And only at the third stage it's possible to make all public events and reopen all businesses, including restaurants and parks and hotels. That's in a nutshell. I would say that currently in Moscow we are at stage 0. So this is the plan for the future. However, we do not yet know how long this future will be to come to the third stage. And now may I suggest to move to Belarus, Dalia?
Yes. So Belarus, our path is different, and so obviously there is no any reasons for the Russian government to announce like official lockdown in the future. Besides, like politically wise, we have a presidential election that will take place in the beginning of the August. So that's why we assume that everything will stay at least according to the legal regime as it is as of now. So the trend is cautiously positive in terms of spread of the virus. But what is the good news is that our medical system is coping quite well, at least as of now. The hospitals are full, but we have quite good and well-developed medical system, which we inherited from the Soviet times. So we have enough spaces, and there is a huge wave of charity initiatives and programs from private business, from international organizations that help to deliver the necessary medical equipment and devices to the hospitals. Private business tends to be socially responsible and conscious in terms of corona spread, and what we feel that soft quarantine measures will retain at least till the end of the August. So the trend will be that most of the companies are working from home. But what is a major concern for us, for the Russian nationals, is that we may be prevented from traveling to the rest of the world after their borders have reopened. Now we hear that Europe is eternally open. Maybe in summer it will be open for the rest of the world, but we don't know whether the Belarus will be considered the most risky jurisdiction. So I think this is all from my side, and I'll give the floor to Ukraine. Valeria?
Valeria, are you there? Are you on mute maybe? No, we seem to have some technical problems here. How about Yekaterina?
Yes, I'm here. I can continue.
Yes, you can maybe go through your slide that you didn't finish, and then maybe move on to your future slide, please.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Yekaterina.
Yes, I wanted to finish that several companies doing business in Kazakhstan received state support, especially small and medium enterprises who are exempt from certain taxes and social security contributions that relate to the employees fund for 6 months from April to September. And these sectors include tourism, transport, IT, consulting, private education, private healthcare, catering, retail, and other affected businesses. And I have already said that agricultural sector received certain support, and people who lost their income can apply for the government support for 42,000 tenge per month, which is about $100. They can also rely on temporary loan relief and other support from the government with respect to reimbursement of utility bills, expenses, and certain categories receive food packages from the government. And now I would like to give floor to Irina to discuss measures for the future.
Yeah, thank you, Ekaterina. I will ask Valeria from Ukraine to speak about future in Ukraine.
Yes, thank you, Irina. I believe you could not hear me, and now we could talk a little bit about the future. And the first stage of easing of the quarantine period in Ukraine were on May 11th, and on that stage some of the shops has been reopened. Restaurants also has been reopened for the home delivery as well. They may operate on summer terraces. Beauty salons has been reopened, and some other public services also started working. And still, entertainment services such as theaters, movie theaters are closed. Some of the public food services inside of premises are closed as well, and use of public transport is also still limited in Ukraine. The second stage of easing of quarantine period is expected on May 22 or May 25th at the latest. And at that stage, some fitness centers and sport trainings are allowed, and some other limitations will be lifted by the government of Ukraine. So I shall pass to Kazakhstan.
Yes, thank you, Valeria. The official lockdown ended in Kazakhstan. People and organizations are ordered to continue following strict sanitary and disinfection requirements involving wearing of masks, gloves, use of temperature measurements, disinfectants, and social distancing rules. 3 new modular anti-infection hospitals were built in the 3 largest cities of Kazakhstan. Now medical institutions and laboratories try to test for the COVID-19 as many people as they can. The state authorities use digital tracking of individuals, safe isolating at home to prevent the spread of the virus. And if the number of infected people does not increase dramatically, all business organizations might open in June. Nevertheless, people might be required to pass tests and present medical certification that they are not infected in certain cases. We expect the wave of insolvencies and liquidation and restructuring of companies in the following months. We will see what will happen. And now I would like to give to
Yeah, thank you, Irina. Thank you very much. Apologies to all our colleagues on the line. We had some technical difficulties, but we have now moved to our Q&A session, and we will be happy to discuss the questions. Let me scroll down in the chart the questions we have here. Okay, the first question is to Ukraine. Are there any restrictions on traveling to Ukraine from abroad or internal traveling? Valeria.
Yeah, starting from March 17th, all Ukrainian borders have been closed for foreigners. and only Ukrainians may cross the borders to return to Ukraine. Unfortunately, foreigners may not come to Ukraine at this period, and we are not aware when the Ukrainian government will lift those limitations and when we can expect that the Ukrainian borders are open to the foreign citizens. But Ukrainians may still travel abroad. However, many countries have been introduced some limitations to cross their borders. So, unfortunately, the Ukrainian borders are limited for crossing for this period.
Thank you, Valeria. Next question is for Russia. The question for Russia is just a moment, please. If employees refuse to come to work due to the spreading of coronavirus infection, can their employment be terminated for job abandonment? I will try to answer this question, and probably it will be also helpful to hear the comments of other jurisdictions as well, since this may be a reality in any country. So in Russia, the answer to this question depends on the period of time. Whether it happened during during the period from 30th of March to 11th of May. In this case, if an employee refuses to come to work, the employee may not be disciplined and may not be terminated, because officially it was a regime of no working days. However, if the employee agreed to work remotely and then decided not to do it anymore, so this is not an appropriate behavior, I would say, since no remote work is formalized by respective amendments to the employment agreement, and in such case, refusal of the employee will not be justifiable. Now, may I ask Daria to comment from the Belarusian perspective? Probably Katerina from Kazakhstan. Do you have any comments on this question? No comment. Okay. Next, then we move on to next question. The Russian government has issued the decree number such dated 29th April 2020, which allows foreigners to enter Russia in case they provide technical services to import equipment for local companies. According to this decree, these foreigners must be listed in the special files of FSB. Would you please tell more about this possibility, clarify what it means practically, and describe the procedure step by step for coming to Russia? Thank you for this question. It's a difficult question for me, I would say. Indeed, this decree was passed end of April. As far as I know, it was not enacted and the external borders are still closed. I do not have any details to share with you during this session to describe the procedure, whether it may apply or not. Let me double check if there is such possibility, and I will return to you with the details on whether this is possible at all. Thank you for your comprehension. One additional question for Kazakhstan. The situation related to quarantine is unpredictable. It is forecast that the second wave of the virus can happen in autumn. If the employers do not want to include supplementary agreements related to distance work or change working conditions each time, depending on the local situation, what are the flexible options you can recommend?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Yes, thank you. We recommend to conclude supplementary agreements to employment contracts, and it is necessary to specify the workplace as the office of the employer or employee's home or other places at the discretion of the employer. The employer specified in the Employers Act. For example, if the government declares a shutdown of the enterprises, an employer can unilaterally issue an Employers Act. In Kazakhstan, usually it's the order, and specify that all or certain employees ought to work from their homes for a certain period of time. And according to the Kazakhstan Labor Code, an employer is liable for the employee's safety. And in this case, in case of strict quarantine regime in Kazakhstan, it is safe both for the employer and employee if employees perform their work duties from home. And for example, some of our clients tell us that they experience problems when they cannot contact their employees by phone or other means of communication because their employees travel to other places. If an employee is obliged to work at home, according to the employer's order, it is easier for an employee to contact him and control his performance. Thank you. Please, can you tell us about other questions?
Thank you, Ekaterina. One question for Belarus. The question is about spread of remote work and how to formalize remote work relationships. Daria, were you able to answer the question?
Yes, Irina, thank you. Yeah, truly, remote work is a trend in the region. And basically in Belarus, and I assume as in all other our jurisdictions, we have two options. Either this is like a mutual consent of the parties, and then we sign just an additional agreement to the employment contract stipulating all the conditions of remote work. Or remote work may be introduced unilaterally by the employer as a change of the essential working conditions. And as I said, government now allows to have only 1 day written notice to the employee on such change. But in case employee disagrees, surely the employment can be terminated by the employer. So this is basically two options that we might have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. I think we should move on to Ani now, because Ani also has some wrap-up comments for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. I would first like to apologize our audience for the technical issues that we had today. So if your question did not get answered, I recommend that you contact the presenters by email. And if your query is, however, related to a different jurisdiction, you can contact me at ani.laxo@iuslaboris.com or go to the people pages of our website to find the right contact. For some insightful information and further updates on the coronavirus, I recommend that you visit the Ius Laboris Corona page, which is regularly updated as the situation evolves. From there, you can upload our coronavirus guide for international employers with information from 58 countries. So finally, I would like to thank everyone for attending, and thanks also to our presenters for their insights, and apologies again for the technical issues. So with that, this webinar will now be ending. Thank you.